Hello everyone, welcome back at my next video on YouTube channel or any other platform where I'm posting these videos, and continuing with Egypt. This is number 2 video, or the second video about this, and today I would like to focus on climate and geography of Egypt and maybe some cities, and I think that would be all because I would like to cut it to shorter videos. Maybe it's better for you to focus and make it kind of much more useful and effective. So the geography, actually we know that Egypt is in North Africa, Northern Africa continent. It has almost 1.1 million square kilometers. So it means that it's the world's 30th largest country of the planet, which means that it's a really huge country to govern and actually just to cover it somehow up. Due to the extreme aridity of Egypt's climate, population centers are concentrated along the narrow Nile Valley. As I said, that without the Nile, actually there is no Egypt, no ancient Egypt or no modern Egypt. And delta, which is actually delta up north towards the Mediterranean Sea from Cairo, meaning that about 99% of the population uses about 5.5% of the total land area. So land area is actually huge, but basically people use just 5.5% of the whole area of Egypt. 98% of Egyptians live on 3% of the territory, because everything else is basically desert. Western desert or Eastern desert, part of the huge Sahara desert. To the west, it borders to Libya, to the south to Sudan, and the Gaza Strip and Israel to the east. And the rest of it are actually the coastlines and the sea, because there is Mediterranean Sea in the north coast and Red Sea on the east coast. A transcontinental nation, it possesses a land bridge, which is Suez Canal, which is actually man-made construction, which is actually connection between Africa and Asia, traversed by navigable waterways. So it is a waterway that connects the Mediterranean Sea with the Indian Ocean by way of the Red Sea, and it actually, when it was finished, it basically shortened all the way from Asia to Europe and the Mediterranean Sea enormously, because then otherwise all the ships and boats would have to actually navigate around Africa. I think that a part of the Nile Valley and all the Nile river fancy about this. The majority of Egypt's landscape is desert, as I mentioned, with a few oases scattered about. Which is interesting here, and I think also in Libya or Morocco, in other countries with this kind of climate, but this is quite specific because Egypt has a specifically interesting climate because of the Red Sea, and it makes everything actually very, very warm. There are actually sort of winds, and these create the prolific sand dunes that peak at more than 30 meters high. Egypt includes parts of the Sahara Desert, the Libyan Desert, and as I mentioned, these winds are very particularly interesting, especially in springtime, summertime, because they are very, very warm, almost hot, and it makes it even more arid. Sinai Peninsula, which is actually part of Egypt, in the north coast, from the north coast to the east, hosts the highest mountain of Egypt, which is Mount Catherine at 2,642 meters. The Red Sea Riviera on the east of the peninsula is renowned for its wealth of coral reefs and marine life. Towns and cities. Cairo is the capital and is the biggest city and capital of Africa. It actually hosts 22 million people around, I mean, together with all the suburbs around. The second largest city is Alexandria, then Aswan in the south, which is the hottest actually place of Egypt usually. Asiyut, the modern Egyptian capital and largest city, is now new capital, which will actually take some population and especially military staff and administration and some government people from Old Cairo, and might actually be a little bit better for tourism in old Cairo. Then, of course, Giza, El Mahala, El Kubra. Giza was actually sometimes the separate city. Now it is the part of actually the huge Cairo population, complex. Hurghada, Luxor, Komombo, Port Safaga, Port Said in the north, Sharm el Sheikh, which is very touristic popular, Suez, where the south end of the Suez Canal is located, so it's a city basically, Zagazig and Minya. So these are actually the biggest cities of this country. Climate, as I mentioned, is very arid winds. Most of Egypt's rainfalls actually are in winter months. So south of Cairo, rainfall averages only around 2 to 5 millimeters. So it means that south from Cairo is a very, very arid climate with a really minimum rain. And intervals of this rain is just sometimes few years, many years. Sometimes there are years when there is no precipitation, no rain at all. On a very thin strip of the northern coast, rainfall can be as high as 410 millimeters. So usually places like northern Sinai and Alexandria, Port Said, these places have usually much more rain, mostly between October and March, so in a winter time. Snow falls on Sinai's mountains. So in Sinai mountains, there is a snow, and some of the northern coastal cities such as Damietta, Baltim, and Sidi Barani, they all had actually snow, and rarely in Alexandria. I think a couple of years ago, even last year, there was a snow in Alexandria, but it lasts a couple of hours or usually just like one day, and then it's over. A very small amount of snow fell on Cairo on 13th of December 2013, the first time ever in many decades. And I think since 2013 there was no snow in Cairo, as I remember well. Egypt generally has a very unusually hot, sunny and dry climate. Average high temperatures are high in north, but very or to extremely high in the rest of the country during summer especially. The cooler Mediterranean winds consistently blow over the northern seacoast, which helps to get more moderated temperatures, especially at the height of the summertime. So it means that when you want to actually be a little bit cooler, a little bit, and have these cooler weather and winds, Mediterranean coast or northern coast is the best option. Then there are actually very, very hot and dry winds that originates from the vast deserts. So it comes from the deserts in the south, usually from Sudan, and blows in the spring or in the early summer. And these hot winds bring scorching sun and dust particles and usually brings daytime temperatures over 40 degrees Celsius. So sometimes it's really 43, 44, 40, but the wind is blowing, but the wind is actually really, sometimes it's so hot, but it's still actually better than without the wind. The wind is very hot, but it makes you a little bit cooler. And sometimes even over 50 degrees Celsius, usually in the middle of desert or somewhere out of the cities. I don't experience usually this in interior of the desert. And then a relative humidity, which is very low in Egypt general, around 20-30%. But then the general relative humidity in these times actually drop to 5% or even less. So it means there is very, very hot and very, very dry, which I mentioned in previous video. It helps actually to preserve all these monuments, temples, mummies, and all the sites actually, and all the wonders of the world which you can find here. Of course, before actually the Aswan Dam and Nasser Lake, which was built with the help of many other countries, the Nile was actually flooding. Every year the floods came and flooded annually, which actually ancient Egypt was dependent on. So the floods actually brought this fertile mud and fertile soil, and this Aswan Dam actually replenished Egypt's soil a lot. This gave Egypt a consistent harvest throughout the years. So now actually is much more regulated, but still, of course, the harvest is sometimes several times in some crops a year around the Nile Valley and in the delta of the Nile. The potential rise in sea levels, like I think this, now we can jump into this global warming problems which all the world is facing. It's not only here. But densely populated coastal strip of Egypt is actually threatened by the sea levels to rise. Well, we can talk about it much more, of course. I don't focus primarily on this because that's another topic. Of course, we are all facing, all the countries of the planet face global warming. I think I can stick to 10 minutes all the time, and next time we can talk about population and economy, and that would be perfect, I think, to make it shorter and make it much more focused on some area of this country, and in the future many other countries. Thank you very much. See you next time.